Jesus, you love me too much, oh, too much, oh, too much. Jesus, you love me too much, oh, too much, oh, too much. Jesus, you love me too much, oh, too much, oh, too much.
You think because he stopped his car for you, your life has changed?
I don't know what you mean, madam.
Grace, you must tell me. I cannot. Stay away from Nathaniel. Whatever he promised you, forget it. Girls like you don't survive in his world. I have survived in every world I have ever entered, madam. We will see about that.
Yes, we will.
Grace had never seen the sun, but she knew exactly what warmth felt like. She felt it every Sunday morning when she took her position outside St. Michael's Church in Owerri, settled herself onto her wooden stool, and opened her mouth. The warmth came not from the sky, but from something inside her chest, something that had been there since she was a child, something nobody had ever been able to take from her. Not poverty, not darkness, not loss. She was blind since she was 7, a fever that came fast and left slowly. And when it finally left, it took her sight with it. Her mother had wept for 3 days. Her father had not wept at all. He simply disappeared one morning and never returned. It was her grandmother who held the family together after that. And when her grandmother grew old and too sick to work, it was Grace who stepped forward. She was 19 years old and she sang for money. Not because she had no other options, because she had no other gift. Her voice was the only thing the fever had not touched, the only thing poverty had not dimmed, the only thing that still worked the way God originally intended. And so, every Sunday morning after the service ended and the congregation poured through the iron gates in their finest clothing, Grace was already there. Already singing, already pulling something from the air that made people slow down before they even realized they had slowed down. She sang for her grandmother's medication. She sang for her younger brother Daniel's school fees. She sang because if she stopped, the silence would swallow everything. That particular Sunday, the congregation was larger than usual. A visiting pastor had drawn people from 3 different parishes, and the offering had been generous. She could tell by the sound. The fuller crowd, the louder voices, the heavier footsteps. She adjusted her pitch without thinking and let the song rise. She never heard the car stop. Nathaniel Obi was one of the most powerful men in Nigeria. At 41, he had built a media and entertainment empire from a single radio station his father had left him and 300,000 naira he had borrowed from a childhood friend. He had offices in Lagos, Abuja, and London. His name appeared in business magazines beside words like visionary and unstoppable. He drove himself that Sunday because his driver was ill and because something restless inside him needed the road, needed movement, needed to think. He had been thinking about ending things. Not his life, his work. 15 years of building, and the morning before he had received a report that his most trusted business partner had been siphoning funds for the past 2 years. The betrayal had hollowed him out in a way he had not expected. He had driven out of Lagos before dawn with no destination, following the road south. And by midday, he was in Owerri without fully understanding how he had arrived. He was passing St. Michael's Church when he heard it. He did not slow down at first. The sound entered the car through the slightly open window and wrapped itself around something in the center of his chest before his mind had processed what it was. He was 50 meters past the church when his foot moved to the brake on its own. He sat there in the middle of the road, engine running, and listened. The voice was extraordinary. Not because it was technically perfect, though it was. Not because the song was familiar, it was not. It was extraordinary because it carried something that no amount of training could produce. Something that came only from a life fully lived inside pain and still choosing beauty. Nathaniel had signed hundreds of artists in his career. He had sat in recording studios with some of the most celebrated voices on the continent. He had never heard anything like this. He reversed the car slowly. He sat outside the church gate for 11 minutes and listened without moving. When the song ended and Grace reached for the small tin cup at her feet, he stepped out of the car and walked toward her. She heard his footsteps and turned her face in his direction. The sightless eyes that met him held a steadiness that stopped him mid-stride. He had expected nervousness or the practiced gratitude of someone accustomed to charity. He found neither. He found a young woman sitting in complete dignity on a wooden stool who simply waited for him to speak. He crouched down so they were level. "I heard you singing," he said. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to know I'm asking seriously. Have you ever recorded your voice?" Gracie's expression did not change. "No, sir." "Would you be willing to?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Who are you?" He told her. She had heard his name before. Daniel had mentioned it once in connection with a music program on television. She did not react the way most people reacted to his name. She simply nodded slowly and asked him what recording her voice would cost her. He told her it would cost her nothing. She told him she would need to speak with her grandmother first. He waited. Her grandmother, a small woman named Mama Chi, who moved with the careful slowness of someone who had learned to conserve every drop of energy, emerged from the small house behind the church compound where they rented a single room, listened to Nathaniel speak for 4 minutes, studied his face with the thoroughness that only the very old and the very wise can manage, and then looked at Grace. "Your voice was never meant for this street," Mama Chi said quietly. "Go." Lagos received Grace like a city that did not yet know what it was receiving. Nathaniel installed her in a modest but clean apartment in Lekki and arranged for her to begin working immediately with his best producer, a quiet, methodical man named Emeka, who had shaped the sound of 3 platinum albums. Grace moved through the new environment with the careful precision of someone who had learned long ago that unfamiliar spaces surrendered their secrets to patience. Within 2 weeks, she knew every corner of the apartment, every step to the studio, every voice in the building. She worked harder than anyone Emeka had ever seen. She arrived first, she left last. She asked questions that showed she was not just learning the mechanics of recording, but understanding the architecture of sound, how silence worked inside a song, how breath could carry meaning, how a single held note could make a listener feel something they had no words for. Nathaniel visited the studio twice in the first week. By the 3rd week, he was there every other day. He told himself it was professional interest. He was a businessman, and this was an investment. But there was something about watching Grace walk, watching her navigate the world without the tool most people considered essential, that rearranged something inside him. She moved through darkness with a certainty he had spent his entire life chasing through light. Victoria noticed. Victoria Eze had been Nathaniel's girlfriend for 3 years. She was beautiful, well-connected, and accustomed to occupying the center of every room she entered. She had met Nathaniel at a charity dinner, and she understood immediately that he was a man worth holding. She had been patient, strategic, and present in all the right ways. She had not expected a blind girl from Owerri to arrive in Lagos and begin rearranging the atmosphere. She visited the studio once and watched Grace through the glass for 10 minutes without speaking. Then she turned to Nathaniel and smiled. "She's interesting," she said. Nathaniel nodded, watching Grace. Victoria filed away what she saw in his face and began to plan. The first move was subtle. She arranged for a story to appear in a small entertainment blog, suggesting that Grace's voice was not entirely her own, that the recordings were being heavily manipulated, and that without studio assistance, Grace could barely carry a tune. The blog had a modest following, but the story was picked up twice and whispered about in industry circles. Grace heard about it through Emeka and said nothing. The second move was less subtle. Victoria contacted a woman named Adaize, a polished, trained vocalist from Abuja, and began quietly lobbying Nathaniel's board to consider a different face for the label's upcoming major campaign. She presented it as a business recommendation. She cited market data and focus group responses. Two board members who owed Victoria social favors began raising questions about whether a known blind street singer was the right flagship for a premium brand. Nathaniel felt the pressure, but did not understand its source. Grace understood everything. She had been navigating invisible forces her entire life. Blindness had made her extraordinarily sensitive to what people did not see. The pause before a word, the shift in breathing, the changed quality of a room when someone's intentions altered.
Beneath warm water. She said nothing to Nathaniel because she had not come to Lagos to be protected. She had come to sing. She asked Emeka to book her for Nathaniel's upcoming industry showcase. Emeka looked at her. Grace, that event has over 2,000 people. Industry people. Press. It's not a small thing. I know, she said. Book it. The Nathaniel A. Entertainment Showcase was held on a Friday evening at the Echo Hotel in Lagos. It was the company's annual event, a celebration of its artists, a preview of upcoming releases, a gathering of everyone who mattered in Nigerian music and media. Nathaniel had not announced Grace as a performer. She had asked him not to. She was listed simply as a special guest. Victoria arrived in a white gown and immediately began walking the room, moving between journalists and executives and board members, laughing at the right moments, placing careful words in careful ears. She had spent the week before the event ensuring that the rumors about Grace had reached enough people to create a skeptical atmosphere. She wanted the audience primed to be unimpressed. She was feeling confident when the lights dimmed. The first artist performed, then a second. Then the host returned to the stage and said simply, "Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest." Grace walked onto the stage in a simple white dress. She carried nothing. She wore nothing elaborate. She moved to the center of the stage with the unhurried certainty of someone who had crossed every kind of difficult terrain and found her footing each time. The audience murmured. Some leaned to whisper to their neighbors. A journalist near the back took out a pen. And then Grace opened her mouth. The first note silenced the room so completely that the air conditioning became audible. What followed was 8 minutes that no one in that room would fully recover from. Grace sang without performance, without theatrics, without a single moment of calculated effect. She simply opened herself and let the voice come through. The voice that had survived a fever and a father's abandonment and years of a wooden stool outside a church gate and a city that had tried to whisper her back into invisibility. The voice carried all of it. The audience felt all of it. A woman 3 tables from the front pressed her hand to her mouth. A veteran music executive who had not cried in public since his mother's funeral felt his eyes fill. Victoria was standing at the side of the room and felt the ground shifting. When Grace finished, the silence lasted 4 full seconds before the room erupted. In the chaos of the standing ovation, Victoria did not see the journalist who was sitting near the back, a young woman named Chisom, who wrote for one of the country's largest entertainment websites. Platforms approach a board member she recognized. She did not see the quiet conversation that followed, or the screenshots Chisom had gathered over the previous week, screenshots of coordinated blog campaigns, messages traced back to numbers connected to Victoria's personal assistant, a paper trail that Chisom had spent 3 weeks assembling after a source inside the label had grown uncomfortable with what they were watching. The story published at midnight. By morning, it had been shared 40,000 times. The headline read, "How a top executive's girlfriend tried to silence the voice you heard last night." The evidence was detailed, documented, and devastating. Victoria's campaign, the planted blog stories, the board lobbying, the attempt to replace Grace with a prearranged substitute was laid out
paragraph by paragraph. Her personal assistant, faced with being named publicly, had already confirmed everything to Chisom before the story ran. Victoria's phone rang from early morning until she stopped answering it. 3 brands that had been discussing partnerships with her personal styling business quietly withdrew. The board members who repeated her talking points issued careful statements distancing themselves from what they called misinformation they had not adequately questioned. Nathaniel terminated his relationship with Victoria before noon, not in anger, but in the quiet, definitive way of a man who had once trusted a business partner for years, only to discover the betrayal behind the trust. He did not call her. He sent one message. "I hope you find something worth building. This is goodbye." Grace was in the studio when she heard about the story. Emeka showed her the headline and read the key paragraphs aloud. She listened without interrupting. When she finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can we record today?" Emeka laughed, a surprised, full laugh that echoed off the studio walls. "Yes, Grace, we can record today." Her first single released 6 weeks later. In the music video, shot in Owerri, Grace sat on a wooden stool outside a church gate in a faded blue dress. The same stool, the same gate, the same morning light. But this time, when the camera pulled back, it revealed something the frame had been hiding, an entire city standing still to listen. The song reached #1 in 4 countries within 10 days. Daniel's school fees were paid. Mama Chi moved out of the single rented room behind the church compound and into a small house with a garden where she could sit in the sun. Grace did not buy herself extravagant things. She bought a piano, her first, and learned to play it by touch, by ear, by the same patient intelligence she had applied to every unfamiliar space she had ever entered. Nathaniel sat in the front row of her first headline concert in Lagos. 15,000 people filled the arena. When Grace walked onto the stage, the roar was immediate and enormous. She stood at the microphone and smiled. She could not see the crowd, but she could feel them. 15,000 heartbeats pressing towards her through the darkness. 15,000 people who had stopped what they were doing to come and be in the same room as this voice. She had felt warmth like this before. It felt exactly like the sun. The people who try to silence greatness always end up amplifying it. But here is the question. Do you think Victoria deserved a second chance, or did she get exactly what she earned? Drop your answer below. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today, and drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.